Thanks, everyone. Robert Saunders here. I love this slide, not because it's me in the middle. It's because I have Kubernetes, Windows, Azure, VMware, and I should put a Linux icon on here. The cool thing about the roles and what I've been doing right now is about 5, 6 years ago, Microsoft kind of said, Rob, you need to learn Linux and Kubernetes, and you probably need to learn it pretty fast. So what I'm trying to get across here is part of this data platform migration, modernization, learn all the tools you can. Learn them all. Don't run just SQL on Windows. There's much more to it. And then, of course, in my spare time, I do some of this, and these are my Pembroke Welsh Corgis. I did actually go to Pembroke. Steve and I did a couple days ago, so I threw that photo in. Yes, it was freezing cold, because I'm from Arizona, so I have to wear a hat and a bunch of coats. But anyway, this is what I do in my spare time. It's kind of fun. It was ironic we were here, so I had to get the official trip to Pembroke. Steve?
So howdy, everybody. Steve McMaster. I got to say howdy. I'm from Texas. And when I say howdy, you got to say howdy back, please. Howdy. Howdy. Okay, now I feel at home.
Howdy back.
Back.
Yeah.
Howdy back. So I've been with Dell for about 24 years. I've been on the Microsoft Alliance for a little over a decade. I have the technology strategy around all the things having to do with data. And so we're going to give you some opinions of where we see the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform going and where Dell's alignment specifically is. Yes, we do SQL sizing on traditional architectures with Windows Server. Yes, we can talk a little bit about that, but it's so much more than that. So to that end, if we can go ahead and go to the next slide, it's a journey that we find that we're on. And for many of the experiences that we have with many of you, as you're looking to modernize your architecture, SQL Server 2022. How many are using 2022? Yeah, of course. Buck in the back. We love it, by the way. There's all kinds of amazing things as far as compat mode and all that stuff. So when you're looking at old architectures and you're looking to modernize on something new, like some new AMD servers, Azure Stack HCI, traditional 3-tier architecture, whatever that is, we absolutely do that. We've been doing that for decades. The thing is that that's just the start of the journey. To use the Churchill World War II thing, it was the end of the beginning, right? That reality as you're getting modernized is really where you start, getting going, right? Pulling your socks on, right, Rob? And what that does is we really need to think about that this is becoming more and more a Linux world. And we're finding that with Microsoft, we're finding that with Azure. You're probably already familiar with the move that's happening there. There's a lot of reasons why. Yes, it is some different tooling. Yes, it can be a little bit different than the experience you've had in the past. That's okay. Learning a new way to do things is good, but this really sets the table for what's next because Linux has such a small attack vector. It does really well when you go to the next path, which is around containerization and that abstraction. So I remember 20 years ago when I was first getting engaged with VMware and virtualization platforms, and it's kind of eating the world. That same thing is happening right now around containerization. It may have crept up on you, but it's taking over the world. Why? Everybody wants to write cloud native. All of your executives that you have when they get up in front of their stockholders or whoever, they're all saying things like cloud first. What does it mean? They have no idea. But they're trying to do this cloud native idea. And a lot of the engagements you're going to see here throughout the sessions today, tomorrow, and Saturday is around that idea, because if I go the next step, if I use that platform around containerization, I can run cloud native on premises. Yes, I said it right, premises.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Somebody says on premise, that's not, it's on premises. Mm-hmm. Not to get English school teacher, wrapping your knuckles on this, but that's where you can do true hybrid cloud. The same tooling you're using up in Azure, around Azure Data Studio and Azure Resource Manager, it's the same tools. And whether that's going to be on a Microsoft architecture with Azure Stack HCI, or whether that's going to be on a VMware platform with VxRail, or if it's going to be with Red Hat and OpenStack and OpenShift, it's all the things. Too many times people think it's an or story, that it's binary, is this or that. It's all the things. There are lots and lots of validation. We talked about that this morning with our S3 connectivity. We'll talk about that tomorrow with Azure Stack HCI. We'll talk about that on Saturday, talking about VMware architecture specifically with PowerStore, traditional SAN build. All of those things apply. And when we at Dell look at the reality, we think of it as a holistic model. In many instances, your interaction with any OEM, not just Dell, has been very speeds and feeds. How fast can it go? How can I get to 80% utilization? My AMD platform, I want it to be a screaming demon, and all that stuff's great. But we also have to be mindful of the entire picture, the entire portfolio here. So we talk about virtualization. That decision, in many instances, is a religious level decision that may have been made a decade ago. And although I can tout the benefits of Azure Stack HCI, you may have some deep sunk investments in VMware. Peace. It's a beautiful thing. We can do all of the things off that architecture as well, because that decision around virtualization helps me make my decision around containerization and the orchestration around that. All of those things have to be part of the model, because what we want to do is, regardless of the platform, I like to abuse analogies. Imagine that you're out here in some of the backwoods areas and you have a tractor, right? So you're going through and you're plowing a field. Let's say that the plow that you're using, you're a Microsoft guy. You like using Microsoft Server, you like using Azure Stack and the capabilities there. Right next to you, there's another tractor that's plowing VMware. Right next to you, another tractor plowing OpenStack, OpenShift. Okay, it doesn't matter what that fertile field is. All of that is a fertile field. I'm planting my seeds of SQL managed instance or business continuity or Postgres or machine learning or outside of Arc data services, cognitive services, SQL Edge. All of those things just plant in whichever row, and it just works. Cloud native. So from a Dell perspective, we're all in on this, and we've done validation on all of the things, on all of the powers. Rob, do you want to take over for the next couple of slides?
Yeah, I will. I wanted to point on this one too. It was funny, I wrote about this holistic model a couple of years ago in a blog, and then of course our marketing folks made it actually look like something that it should have looked like, not the back of the napkin. But right in through here, software defined, of course, everything. Virtualization optional. We did a paper with Microsoft last year, where we actually even got some better performance numbers running that thing way up there at the top, SQL Server in a container on bare metal Kubernetes compared to virtualized Kubernetes nodes. Don't know why, didn't have a ton of time to actually tear open the lab and understand why things weren't correct, but it was fine and it screamed, but maybe that control plane is shifting. Maybe it's still virtualization, maybe it's now a containerized platform, don't know. It was really interesting that we didn't have a lot of time to tear it back and literally understand why, but I'm trying to figure out where the new control plane is going to be. But in the meantime, of course, you've seen probably Bob and Buck's slide here about 2022 and all the things that you get with the most cloud-connected database. I was curious, Steve asked earlier, NoSQL 2022 utilization right now. Why is that? Is it because vendor lock-in or time or resources? Just curious.
Licensing?
Licensing?
That's a big one.
What's that? Yeah, okay. What else came out, I'm not sure if you heard the announcement, is pay-as-you-go for on-premises SQL Server also. That's pretty cool. That's pretty powerful. That was announced at, Ignite? Yes.
Yeah, November.
So, and then, of course, all the Arc connected, and I do a ton of this all day, every day. If you're here tomorrow, I've got a really cool demo, and on Saturday, too, around all things kind of Azure Arc related. Which leads me into this slide. So I put this one together to kind of maybe disambiguate Azure Arc with a bunch of vertical swim lanes. So way over here, infrastructure. So any machine, physical or virtual, Windows or Linux, a monitoring agent. Yes, we're talking at a SQL Server conference, so SQL Server you can enable. You saw, I think Bob did it in the demo this morning around Arc enabling your SQL Server. You can even Arc enable it at install time. So you get a lot of benefits there. And then you have Virtual Machine Manager. Yes, you also have VMware for vCenter for Azure Arc. That's pretty cool. Yes, I can deploy a VMware virtual machine via the Azure portal. And then now we start coming into this brave new world of Kubernetes, where we start bringing in this layer cake going this way, built on this foundation from Dell. Because I think, in fact, I remember my friend in the back, Buck, said if you don't have a solid foundation for Kubernetes, you're going to have problems.
A house of cards, I think, was the statement.
So we do a lot of validation here to make sure this stack is solid and redundant and works perfectly well. A lot of validation back and forth with Microsoft too. But way over here, we have Azure Arc enabled data services, a place that really makes my socks go up and down. I do a lot of papers here. I spend a lot of time over here. This is different than this way over here because it does require Kubernetes as a foundation. But it's crazy powerful. Tomorrow you'll see a demo where I deploy 20 SQL Server managed instances in just a few minutes. So if you can do that with a virtualized SQL Server environment, or if you have 20 bare metal SQL servers and you want to deploy them in just a few minutes, please, I'll see if I can beat you. I bet I can, using Azure Arc. Now I have to have this in place. Yes, Kubernetes and my Dell tech. But it's pretty powerful, especially from a DB as a service perspective. So, question for everybody in the room, have you used any of these Azure Arc technologies right now, or have you thought about them? Curious. Not yet?
Oh, there's one in the back, yeah.
Azure ML.
Okay, Azure ML. Okay, got it. So a lot of, yes, coming here, Azure ML, and then we have this future bucket that's empty. I did that for a reason. There's a lot more functionality will be coming, hopefully, in this stack, and it's going to be enabled if you have this stack in place. So talk with your admins, see if you have a Kubernetes cluster in your environment. I've talked with clients sitting in rooms where I have DBAs, developers, C-level folks doing a lunch and learn for a few hours, and DBAs are telling me, wow, that'd be great, I'd love to do that, but I don't know what Kubernetes is, or I can't even spell it. I get that. So you'll hear the sysadmin in the room say, oh, I have a Kubernetes cluster over here, OpenShift or whatever. You can, let me carve you off a namespace where you can start doing this right now. So if you don't know if you have it, ask some of your teams in your organization, or just spin up something small in your local environment. You can do this too. Or spin it up in Azure. There's a lot of places you can do testing. Microsoft has a lot of sandbox type environments for this entire toolkit, ArcBox being one of them. So a lot of different ways to get your hands into this technology. It's a big deal, and it's moving fast, and it's not going to slow down. Any questions, thoughts about this kind of Arc or brave new Linux?
Again, an opinion statement. It kind of feels like, I mentioned Churchill earlier, stay on the military theme. It's kind of like a beachhead. This is the start of how this whole cloud native, on-premises, all the Azure tools and features, you're starting to see them trickle in. Over a period of time, will expand, and it'll be the Borg. Resistance is futile. It'll take over all the things that you do. We absolutely see it. And Rob, is it the next slide that we talk about the validation?
Yes. So, as I mentioned earlier, all the Dell Power star.stars, validated, Rail, Azure Stack HCI, great place for AKS and Kubernetes, by the way. And of course, Apex, which is actually the multi-cloud team I moved to now. All validated to run these Azure Arc type workloads. And we continue to validate. Microsoft asks us to run testing on new stacks or new revisions, and we validate, we submit back, and then you go to the website and you see, yes, Dell's validated all these stacks for all these technologies. 5 minutes left. There's the 5-minute window.
Yeah, realize this applies to you right now, especially if you look at the modernization pitch. Remember that journey slide, start, walk, run, fly, that start piece around consolidation? And for many of you, you didn't raise your hand for SQL 2022. As you do that modernization, you'll have the peace of mind of knowing whatever architecture you pick, traditional SAN, AMD servers, HCI, whatever that is, you have peace of mind of knowing I might not be able to turn it on today because I needed, figure out even how to spell Kubernetes, and the cool kids call it Kates. Kates?
Yeah.
I'm not a cool kid.
No.
So, not yet. But the point is that when you're ready, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, whenever that is, the validation is already there. So you don't have to feel like you're in a dead end or you're in this box. Whenever you're ready to turn those things on, go ahead and proceed with the modernization now, and then we can work with you as well as all of our EMEA partners to help you get your feet under you to go that next step. So we just have a few minutes left, right?
And it's worth noting, I get asked this a lot. If I'm running SQL in a container or SQL in Linux, it's the same code base, and you're managing it with the same tools. You're still using SSMS, Azure Data Studio. You're using the same tools. Yes, you have to learn some Linux. That's actually something you should be learning. Kubernetes, also good to learn. But you're using the core fundamental tools that you've used forever. So it's the same tool set, just the different underpinnings. Make sense? Any questions? Thoughts, Buck?
No, it's a great rundown. We actually have another session on the intelligent data platform coming. Dell's a very, very good partner. Had really good luck with their stuff. So
Yep.
Really appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, let's take us home.
Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate it. Let's go to the last slide here. We'll jump through. If you missed the object storage conversation earlier, I did here. Very cool demo. Come talk to me about it if you're interested. Querying object store data. I did a 200 million row demo querying relational data and object.
It's all in Canopy. You should be able to catch it after the fact, right?
Yes. And then, of course, our continued learning. Tons of white papers and actually stuff that makes it real. I'm talking about solutions that we, after talking with clients, that myself and others, we document. So you're not going at this alone. We have pretty substantial. In fact, that one at the top, I just refreshed. My partner and I just refreshed that, a guy that I work on the Azure Stack HCI team with. And it's pretty cool. It talks about that entire stack that we just went through. Linux, Kubernetes, Arc-enabled data services, all in that paper in the top.
We got a session tomorrow. So a 50-minute session going in detail on that if you're interested.
Yep. So please, scan the QR code. I'm curious about your feedback. I'd love to see some feedback for this session. Hopefully you picked up some good tidbits information. And we're around. We're here in this general area, in this room. This is the Dell room. So we're going to be around here until Saturday afternoon. Absolutely.
Until the last session on Saturday.
Yep.
All right, that's it, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.